Families throughout history have been chosen to make this decision. Your family must choose to willingly sacrifice one of the three of you to prevent the apocalypse.
We're not sacrificing anyone.
For every no you give us, hundreds of thousands of people are going to die.
I got a two-parter on working with Knight first, so I know that you reached out to him to get this role going into the shoot. What is something about him that you were really excited to experience, getting to work together, but then also having come out of it, what's something he brought out in you as a performer that you never could have expected?
Well, what he brought out with me, I have to start with that because immediately the answer pops in my head. But what he brought out in me is a way to kind of to juggle emotions, to balance emotions, and sometimes even hide emotions and cover them with other emotions, which is something I've never been asked to do. So I didn't know if I was capable of doing it, and still when I attempted to do it, was unsure if it worked. But he always assured me that it was exactly what he was looking for, and I would always say, if you're happy, I'm happy. But what I mean by that was sometimes when I was going through these scenes and I was feeling a certain way and I was performing them that way, he would say, you're correct in the way you should be feeling, but you have to remember that Leonard, he always feels the pressure of being in charge. He has to, even if he's feeling a certain way, he has to appear that he's just keeping it cool, he's all together, he's in charge, he is guidance. And so I was feeling one way, but trying to perform another way. And I was very unsure whether I was doing it correctly, but I hoped that it worked. And anyway, he was happy, I was happy.
Great success in that respect. I truly mean it, not just because I'm sitting here talking to you. That's making me think. So sometimes you doubted yourself on set.
Oh, all the time.
What was, I guess, Knight's monitor dance? Like something he would do behind the monitor that would signal to you he really liked to take?
Well, that was the thing, because there are certain directors when you know when they're happy. Like with Denis. I know when Denis is happy. He comes out and he says, I deeply love this, I deeply love this. And with Knight's a very monotone person. He's very even-keeled. And so you're never really sure. But every once in a while, I was like, I'd get this from him. I was like, are you sure you got it? And he'd go, bro. And I knew when he called me bro that he was happy with something.
That makes me so happy. I love that. So this is a very different type of role for you, and you deserve many more in this particular category. I think we were talking about it with Army of the Dead, the end of that movie in particular. I saw that, and I'm like, you could do anything well beyond the box that, frankly, this industry has put you in.
Thank you.
But given that it was making me think, is there any past on-set experience or particular role that you were surprised to find coming in handy here when playing someone like Leonard?
Not necessarily role. I always draw from my life experiences, but I can't think of any particular role that I really drew from for this. But I draw from certain moments in my life and definitely pick up emotions through that. But this was just something so unique and something that I had never done before, which is why I sought after this role and these types of roles. Even you brought up Army of the Dead. I mean, originally I had no interest in doing that film. But Zack Snyder said that he would give me the opportunity to kind of make this character more layered and not so one-noted, and give him a heart and make this relationship between him and his daughter, a little more invested. And so that was why I signed on to Army of the Dead, because there were those moments. But this is the type of role that I've sought out all these years, to really kind of stretch myself as a performer, but also open people's eyes to who I wanted to be as an actor, and not because I've said all along that I don't want to be a movie star, I want to be a good actor. And so this was kind of the role that validated that statement.
Heard you say that quite a few times, and it's just like, it genuinely fills my heart to see you doing that and showing people that you were right and you can do it. I wanted to refer to one quote that I read of Knight's. He said about you, right guy, right role, right moment in his life. Do you agree with that? Could you have done something like this sooner, or did now feel like the perfect time to play a character like Leonard?
I don't know if I could have done it sooner. I can't say for sure that I couldn't have. But I definitely can say that there's no way that sooner in my career would my name have lent enough value to lead this film, because it's a big film for a big director with a big cast. And I've been building myself all these years, and mostly through supporting roles. So I can say that that I wouldn't have been ready. Emotionally, I may have, but I just can't say for sure, because even when I was on this film, I just doubted myself so much. Even now, watching the film, I've only seen it once, but I completely picked myself apart, and I can see where there were things that I wasn't happy with. But I hope that that's a good thing, excuse me, meaning that I'm never really satisfied, and I want to grow as an actor. I see room for improvement, and I hope that just expresses how passionate I am about this craft.
A key thing to have in this field, or any field for that matter, when you doubt yourself, is an ability to kind of process that, but also forge forward. So when you come home from a day on set where you've doubted yourself, how do you move into the next day and kind of push that aside?
Luckily with this film, we didn't have a whole lot of room to process.
Fair enough.
It was such a hard schedule. It was long, long days. And since I started on this film, they started this film without me because I was in Guardians. So I literally had 2 days between wrapping on Guardians and going into this film. So I didn't have really a lot of time to process anything. It was kind of after the fact that I started to put it all together and really, think back. And when I saw the film, I kind of started to kind of cringe and like wish I had done this and wish I had been more prepared for that. But I think that I do that with every role, no matter, even if they're smaller roles, even if they're the smallest roles, I'm always going to be that person.
To be fair, I do this with every single interview, and I feel like if I lose that, it means I don't care enough, and so I never want to lose that.
That's a good thing. I think it's a good thing, because it means we just want to just be better. We have room to grow. We still love what we're doing enough to care about, being good at it.
I could not agree more. I'm happy to be in good company on that idea. So you brought up Marvel, and I know that you said you're ready to move on, and you were just talking about growing as an actor too. What is a particular acting muscle that maybe Marvel hasn't given you the opportunity to flex that you're really eager to explore in a future project?
I think there were bits and pieces of where I got to kind of express myself completely as a performer. I mean, definitely there was elements that were left out with the character because I was somewhat limited. But what I was really kind of disappointed in was I just felt like the character was really much more interesting than given credit for, because he had such a tragic background story. But at the same time, I always understood that I was a supporting character, and they had their slate of where they were going with certain things, and anything they weren't really, and there wasn't necessary to step away from that formula. But I think that was it more than anything. I just felt like there was so much left on the table for that character, so much more to explore. But I just, people, I think a lot of times don't really see. They think of Drax, they think of the character, and they think Guardians of the Galaxy. And they don't really realize that I did 7 films as that character over 10 years. So it's a very bittersweet thing, because that character, that role, that franchise changed my life. Not just my career, but it changed my life. So it's hard letting go. But at the same time, it's been 10 years, and I still have places I want to go as a performer. So I have to let go. And like all things must end. And so very bittersweet, because I love everybody involved in those projects. And I'm not just saying that because that's typically what people say. But when we started that out together, it wasn't a massive hit. It was something that we were hoping, we were crossing our fingers would be, but we knew it was special because we were in the room, we were connecting with each other. And there were, when you think back to, Chris Pratt then, Chris Pratt wasn't a massive movie star then. He was hoping to be, but he wasn't. We went out to the movies and saw movies together. He can't do that now. So we just started in a different place and ended up in a different place. But that's why they're special moments to me. They're life-changing moments. So it's hard to let those moments go.
Again, not just saying this because I'm sitting here. Drax is my favorite character in the MCU, and that complexity that you just highlighted in him is what draws me to him.
Oh, thank you.
All right, we have a little game.
Okay.
Because there is a holiday coming up where some people need to express hard news to someone else. And in this movie, Leonard has to warmly and kindly and in a convincing way tell people bad news. So for Valentine's Day, if someone out there needs help breaking up with someone, I have some cliche breakup lines here.
Okay.
can you read them as Leonard?
Okay, I gotta put my glasses on.
As you do that, I will say your tone as Leonard could not be better.
Okay.
Could not be better.
We're on two different paths right now. And I think we should see different people. That was terrible.
I felt when you delivered that to me, now I have to keep a straight face.
Okay,
It's so hard.
I'm really sorry. And it's not you. It's me.
Thank you for indulging me. That was wonderful.
I wish I had a night to study that dialogue. I would come here tomorrow and crush that.
It's really happening.
Sweetheart, close your eyes.
Will you make a choice?
First, I wanted to ask you about Dave, because Dave is often boxed into a certain type of role. Leonard is not that type of role, so what are you most looking forward to other directors out there getting to experience if they give Dave the opportunity to break out of that box like you did?
Well, you know, it was interesting as you were saying that. I was thinking back to what I was considering. I was considering this. There is one person in the world that could pull this off and be a giant and do 30 pages of monologue. Maybe, right? He hasn't done it, but that was my instinct that maybe. Or I could let go of the whole giant part and just open it up to every other actor in the world. Really world-class actors, you know, all of the ones Academy Award guys, all of that stuff. I can then pursue one of them and have them do the 30 pages of monologue, right? And I was like, what should I do? And then I went, my heart was like, God, it's Dave. And I was just like, send Dave the script.
I don't blame you. Your instincts in that respect were spot on. Is there, even though you had that faith in him, is there anything he did in the role that caught even you by surprise, where you didn't even know he was capable of that?
You know, as we started to rehearse, I rehearsed like a play, and that's not, you know, what the history of the movies that he's been in. And I think it's a rare thing anyway to rehearse. That's what they, you know, the other actors say, wow, you actually force us to come and live together and work and rehearse. And I think he's, you know, was worried that these were all such amazing actors and all this stuff. And as he just started to let go a little bit in rehearsals, I started to go, wait, that what you just did there. And then I was like, that was amazing. And then I would call him after rehearsals, and he was like, I know, you know, I'm sorry. I mean, he'd be apologizing and all this stuff. And I'd be like, Dave, I know you think I'm BSing you, but there was some real magic that you're doing. I mean, real magic. And then we'd rehearse, and then when we got to the stage and we got to the actual day, the actors, I think, were a little, you know, he's a giant, like 320-pound giant, comes on the set, and then I go, action. And then he starts, and it's like a 10. Like, he's at a 10. And I remember seeing the other actors' faces. They were, like, looking at each other like, whoa. And I've felt this before, and it's happened to me so many times with Haley, James McAvoy, where the room just goes, you know, the electricity shoots, and you're going, wow, we're seeing something incredibly special right now.
Meanwhile, dude's still doubting himself over there. I'm like, I saw the movie. You are great in it. You literally do not have a thing to worry about.
He's never going to listen to you.
I know. I can tell. I'm like that too. I get it. I wanted to ask you a little bit about the rating, because you have the R rating here, but I think the movie is far less graphic than the book. So what is it like figuring out how much to show, and when showing something is just not necessary?
I mean, I don't have a proclivity to do kind of torture porn. It's just, in fact, I'm very sensitive about that when I'm a viewer. That's not, you know, you unfairly used my being a human being against me, and you didn't, you know, provoke my imagination. You are forcing me to feel something in a way that's, you know, I find distasteful. And so I'm pretty sensitive about it, for me, as myself as a viewer. And yet there's you know, it is a very violent and scary situation. I prefer to find that balance where your mind is filling it in. And so it can be even worse in terms of its impact on you in the right way, where you're finishing the painting and you are you're feeling what the character. I think it's more one-to-one with what the characters are feeling, because they're feeling kind of the ramifications of the violence, and so it's washing over them as they're thinking about it. And same thing with the audience.
Yeah, definitely. My mind goes to probably darker places than the movies do. I did want to ask about adapting the book also, because it feels like you have not adapted very many books, but recently you seem to be pursuing that path a little more often. So for all the other authors out there who might be itching to work with you, what is something you need to see in a piece of source material to signal to you, this is cinematic and I need to get involved in it?
I mean, what a great question. I mean, neither of those pieces were intended to be for me to direct. They came, one my daughter gave me as a gift for Father's Day, and then the other one was for me to produce for some other people. And so both, and it may be both because they came in that way. They weren't coming for me as a job for me to write and direct. I could see the beauty in the premise. But to answer your question directly, both of those pieces, meaning, you know, the source material for Old and Knock at the Cabin, both at the center of them had these really provocative, high concept ideas that were, you know, both scary but emotional. So I could, you know, if they have both those tendrils, that I can keep the ride going, but I can emotionally be dealing with complex things, that's very exciting for me.
Even your original work, that's what keeps me coming back for more. Speaking of your body of work here, one thing I love is your cameos. I would love to sit here and ask you to rank every single one of them, but we do not have time. So can you give me your top 3 cameos that you've ever done in your films?
Oh my God, I would have to really think about that carefully. But I don't want to say too much, but I did enjoy these last 2 because they're very different versions of how to be in the movie. One is kind of, I mean, they're both kind of tongue-in-cheeky and funny, which I really like. I like to make people laugh. But one is more, you know, really embedded in the story, and one is kind of like, you know, an over-the-shoulder kind of thing. So they both had different purposes, but it's fun to be in the audience when that ripple happens, when they're like, you know, 3/4 of them are like, there he is, and the 1/4 is like, wait, who's that Indian guy? And then they're like, that's the guy he's the writer-director of the movie. And I'm like, enough, turn and watch the story you're going to miss. I try not to put too much important stuff right after I hear, so that because they're all like,
I won't spoil it. This one's really good. This one's in my top 3, Ray Reddy, and then the trio of Unbreakable, Split, and Glass. I love that one has an arc. Like, it's a cameo with an arc. It's great.
What do we say? You shouldn't make things up when we're talking about...
Can you open the door, please?
They're breaking in!
I'll preface this first question by saying your chemistry on screen is great. I read a whole lot in the press notes about how you two just wanted to hang out and keep talking together. Offset, too. And I have a quote from M. Night here. He says, at some point I was like, there's nothing else you could say to each other. You've said everything. Stop talking to each other. So two-parter.
That was very good night, by the way.
Really?
Yeah, really good.
I'm terrible at impressions. I wasn't even trying. Two-parter on that. First, what is something that you found you had in common that might have surprised you? But then also tell me like the most random thing that you would talk about just for fun on the side.
Oh, so many secrets.
Oh, so many secrets.
I have them
Can't talk about. We had so many in common things. I think it was kind of spooky, discovering lots of parallels. What have you got a specific one?
Mine was that our grandfathers were both ministers.
Yeah.
Which is a weird one. Kind of a specific one.
Yeah. That we both kind of grew up on farms. I did it the weekends, not during the week. But like my grandfather was a farmer, so my 2 uncles. Jonathan grew up on a farm.
My grandfather was a farmer. So were my uncles.
There were many parallels.
Yeah.
Not just religion and farming, other things too.
That's like all I can picture.
All
right
those
now.
sexy parallels. Churchy farmers.
That's something. Now, for your finding this relationship together beyond like the script and the book, you got a lot of material to work with here, but what is something that you would say is maybe purely your own in terms of figuring out that dynamic? Maybe even something you came up with backstory-wise that we could feel informing your performances, even if we don't see or hear about it.
Having the book, which is such a good guide and such a Bible, and then the way Knight works, he's religious about his script, down to like commas, down to, you know, everything, is that there isn't a lot of room for invention, funnily enough, and we were kind of given everything we needed. And he also, the way he makes a film is that you don't really discover it as an actor. He has seen the entire thing in his head, frame by frame, movements, where you're looking, what you're doing, and so you're slotting into this like mastermind choreography of his, and I think like you, other than just like bringing my own, or calling upon all of my own feelings and the things that I've experienced in my life that are similar to the character, then well, I suppose that really, but I don't know that it changed the film or anything.
Just because I'm curious, and you said that Knight is very specific and direct with things. Is there any kind of direction that he was willing to give you on this set that maybe sometimes directors aren't as direct and specific about that you appreciated and wish you saw more sets out there?
He's super blunt. You know when he likes it and you know when he doesn't like it.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate that. Like he'll be like, no, that's not what I was getting at. And like what Ben said, down to the word and the comma, he really has poured his heart and soul and his focus into making something really specific before you even arrive on set. So you know exactly what you're working towards, which is his vision. And that, I love that, because it's it's very clear whether you're hitting it or not with him. So I would say like his bluntness was probably a thing that I enjoyed.
I feel like bluntness isn't spoken about and highlighted enough as a good quality to have in a director.
Yeah,
at least if that bluntness is wielded well.
Yes.
It is, yeah. He's extremely kind. He never creates any tension. He never raises his voice. Like, I think those are his own rules. He doesn't want to... We're already making a really intense film. I wondered if he might create tension for the sake of our experience, but he really doesn't. He wants you to have a good time making it.
I always like hearing that. So now with Dave, we were talking about this before, and I feel like people often talk about this. He is usually boxed in to certain types of roles. So day one of working with him, what was an expectation you had of him as a performer? And then ultimately, how did he surprise you most by the end of filming?
I had no expectation.
I think I did.
You did? What was your expectation?
Because for me, interestingly, we had been all together for 2 weeks of rehearsal, but Dave was still on Guardians of the Galaxy. He came in even a week and a half later after that, so we'd shot some of those scenes pretending that he was there, which was really weird. So he was like this, he was the big presence that we were missing, and then I think I thought that he was the kind of the most Hollywood element of the film in my eyes, like this big action star. But he's so gentle and generous and sweet, and like he's just a big tender bear. Big old tender bear.
Tender bear. He's just a big tender bear.
I'm not going to try to imitate you. It's tempting, though.
But you do such a good Knight.
Yeah.
Is that? Can you do a Knight impression?
You can.
I can.
Oh,
I'm not
hear
going.
it.
I'm not doing it.
Okay.
Oh.
Respect.
When the cameras stop rolling, baby.
Yeah.
Jonathan, I was reading that this is your first horror movie. Yeah. So what was it about making a horror movie that surprised you most? And now did it leave you with the itch to do more?
I remember one day we were shooting, and it was maybe 3/4 of the way through the process, saying to you, like, this is so intense. I like drumming up the terror and emotion again and again and again and again, because particularly with this movie, once it starts, it doesn't stop. The first couple times you're like, yeah, I got this. But then when it's like the end of the night and you're like, okay, I'm gonna get tied into this chair again, and we're gonna work up the panic, and it was, to keep it at that fever pitch was more taxing than I anticipated.
If you do another horror movie in the future, what particular subgenre of horror would you want to tackle most?
Such a good question.
Genre of horror.
I have preferences, but I'm open to anything. Slasher is always my number one. I love all forms of storytelling. Horror is my genre. Slasher is my subgenre.
I will say that, like, in middle school, I was obsessed with Scream. I had the voice changer.
Movie of all
What's your first?
Jurassic Park.
Yeah, okay, of course.
Do you remember that?
I'd
watched Scream. Had I Scream 4, Scream 5 on the plane on the way over? That was our first conversation we ever had.
That's right.
Was about watching Scream. Which one? The latest one, I think. Yeah.
This makes me so happy.
Yeah.
It's just meant to be.
So Scream 7.
We'll be a couple of Scream queens.
Yeah. Hey.
I mean, they're going to make a 7, I believe it. So I would like to see that happen. Specific character question for you, Ben, because I started to think about this while watching the movie. How do you think he might have reacted had the roles been reversed, and instead of having people barge into the cabin, he was one of the people with a vision?
Wow.
Great question.
That's such a good question, and I think his overall cynicism about life and what you discover in the film, that his job as a human rights lawyer, actually he hasn't even got that much faith in humanity because of what he's witnessed and seen in the cases he's working on. And I feel like the visions wouldn't have got through to him. I think he just doesn't believe in that way. I think he would have just dismissed all of it, or thought he was losing his mind over them actually holding any kind of credence, I think.
Wow,
I would
great
believe that.
answer. That was just off the dome. That was great.
I know, I'm impressed right now. A little bit of a fun apocalypse question right now. This movie's not fun, but I love apocalypse movies. So let's say you, as in real you're in the world and an apocalypse happens. You can pick 2 past co-stars to team up with to give yourselves the best chance of surviving. Who do you each pick?
Definitely Leah Michelle is one, because she's a survivor.
Do we have each other?
You can if you want.
Okay. Oh, and Ben. Done. Leah and Ben.
Yeah, I'm going to pick Jonathan, and then I'm going to pick... to survive the apocalypse. We're kind of going to go skill-based here. I would choose a friend of mine called Ruby Bentel, who was in a period drama on the BBC called Lark Rise to Candlefoot, and she's just great, and she looks great in a bonnet, which wouldn't help me in the apocalypse, but Ruby Bentel would be my apocalypse buddy. You'd love her. Me, Leah, Ruby, and you have a great time.
I would also watch this movie if you ever make it.
Okay, great.
I did want to highlight talking a little bit about Kristen here, because this is like one heck of a first feature for someone, and I always find it interesting that like when a kid comes on set, it's just like, I don't know, there's no pressure of history and everything you've learned. So watching her on set, is there anything that you both saw her do that made you kind of stop and think like, man, if only I had the nerve to try that when I was first starting out?
Yeah, I think that touches on a really interesting point, and there's a difference in the way that Knight spoke with Kristen than he did with us. He was even more blunt with her, I would say, and that's because she hasn't, her own ego isn't getting in her way yet. Whereas we've got like I certainly have the fragility of an actor being like, oh God, and he's careful with that. Whereas her, he just like give it to her. No, like he wouldn't dress up the words. He would just, and that was, I suppose that's something that you can only have as like a young child actor, in that lack of self-doubt in a way. She was just so like. Yeah, she was so unfazed by everything. She just went for it, and she'd never acted before, and then by the end of it, it was such a, we were so thrilled to see that journey, wouldn't we? And the comments that she would make, and you know, by the end, she was kind of giving us comments like, just say it movie. Or she got what the acting, Knight would hate me saying that, but she really understood what acting was by the end.
Totally. She might be a good apocalypse partner, actually.
Oh my God, yeah. She would survive.
What's her greatest skill in the apocalypse?
Probably disarming and charming everyone.
Fair enough.
And I feel like she'd also be able to like, she could be, I don't know, she'd convince people of things. I feel like she'd be a secret weapon. Not that we need it, but like a kind of, she'd be a secret spy.
She's also unflappable.
Yeah.
She was the most unflappable person.
I was the most flapped, and she was the least.
Oh, Ben.
Hi there. Can I talk to you for a little bit?
You have to come inside right now. There were 4 of them.
My first question for you is something I'm going to borrow from the movie. I want to know what your favorite movie is.
Well, my favorite movie is one of the Harry Potter movies. I'm really not sure which one, because I'm working on the 3rd book, and I've only saw the first 2 movies, so I'm really not sure. But once I see the full set, I'll have to take a bunch of time and think about it.
We're going to have to revisit that. My favorite is Goblet of Fire, the 4th one.
Oh, yeah, I haven't seen that one yet.
You've got a lot to look forward to. What was it like being a big Harry Potter fan and getting to meet Rupert?
Well, it was embarrassing.
Oh, why was it embarrassing?
Well, I really never met him before, and I actually didn't start reading the Harry Potter when I first met him, so...
It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
You meet him, and then you get to see something that he was part of that was really special.
Yeah.
Another thing that is very special is making your first feature film. I hope you're very proud of yourself.
Oh, yeah.
Going into filming this movie, what would you say was the most surprising thing in terms of what it took to make a feature film?
How I think that they shoot the movie was really different of how they actually shot it. So I thought that was pretty surprising because there was like a blood track, and I thought they were like, I didn't really think about it, but then when I saw it, they were dragging this like white doll, and it had nothing on it, and they were dragging it across the floor to make that blood track.
Special effects makeup will always wow me. It is a real art. Is there anything you saw a co-star do in this movie that makes you think, like, that was really cool and I want to try that on my next movie?
When I see the other movies and me and my mom sometimes watch how they shoot it, but really I've never seen the blood tracks and stuff. I thought like when you hang up from a string and then the string pulls you up, it's surprising me, and I want to try that sometime.
I have a feeling if you want it, there will be stunts in your future. Do you watch scary movies? What's the scariest movie you've ever seen?
I honestly don't know.
It might wind up being this one. It's pretty unnerving.
Yeah, it was pretty nail-biting, but I thought that one of Night's scariest movies was Sixth Sense. I mean, it was like so bloody. It was like a ghost movie and stuff.
Very special movie. It's a good one. The one that scared me the most was Signs, the alien movie.
I've never seen that one.
It's another M. Night movie, and it's very, very good. When the time comes, I recommend it. I am a big believer that we don't tell people good job nearly enough. So can you think of a time on this set when you saw one of your co-stars just crush it, really go above and beyond with one of their scenes, and you want to tell them good job?
Well, I would say Ben, because he's always so focused on doing this, and like every time that he's on set, he's acting, and his emotion, like when I don't know where to begin, his emotion like entirely brings me into the story, and like it helps me sink into Wen's emotions and feelings. So I think that like Ben is always crushing it, and I really want to tell him good job all the time.